Welcome to the Light Seekers Lounge. I'm Annie Love, and this is episode 105. My guest today is Sharyn Holmes, who is an award-winning coach, writer, speaker, artist, and not-for-profit worker. Sharyn and I both studied coaching through the Beautiful You Coaching Academy, and I have admired their work around social justice, spirituality, and personal sovereignty for many years now. This year, Sharyn became an author of the book Becoming Gutsy and Formidable, One Life Out Loud, which was published by The Kind Press. I loved diving into this conversation with Sharyn, all about their experience writing a book, how receiving a diagnosis can bring us new understanding of ourselves, the power of a good soundtrack, and living with full expression as a multi-passionate artist and creative spirit. Hello, fellow seeker of light, and welcome to the Light Seekers Lounge. I'm Annie Love, and I'm a certified coach for incredible humans who want to build wholehearted businesses. I help them master their mindset, create simple strategies, and take meaningful action towards their goals in a soul-nourishing way that honours their business, their family, and most importantly, themselves. I'm also a wife and a mum to 3 gorgeous boys. Our parenting journey has been, well, a bit of a roller coaster. And while our family has navigated some pretty tumultuous times, I've learned just how important it is to keep seeking the light and the joy. Even in the midst of darkness, I believe that we can find light on the other side, even if the landscape is different to how we expected it to look. Here in the Light Seekers Lounge, we're going to share stories and conversations about how we create our best life, even when things feel hard. Thank you for being a light seeker with me. I am so glad you're here. Now, let's get on with the show. Sharyn Holmes, thank you so much for coming into the Light Seekers Lounge today and being on the podcast. So lovely to have this chat with you.
Oh, hi, Annie. It's great to see you. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. You and I were both in the same cohort when we did the Beautiful You Coaching Academy back in May 2019, finished in November 2019.
2018. 2018. Yeah. It was 2018. I remember because I started the course just as I was made redundant from my job. So It was like an interesting transition time. So it's memorable for that reason, because it was a time of transition, and it was like, well, this is what I'm going to be doing now. And I guess once I'd begun, ideas and things just flowed from there.
Yeah, amazing. And I also remember meeting you at the Inspiration Day I think we had in was it July 2019?
In Melbourne.
In Melbourne, yeah. And I remember you running the Formidable Voices event.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah,
while you were down there too. So, and then at the Biker Awards when it was online back in pandemic days and chatting to you in the little breakout room beforehand.
Yeah, that's right. That was lovely.
And you are a multi-award winning coach and shortlisted currently for the next round of awards for Biker. What are you up for this time?
My book, Becoming Gutsy and Formidable, One Life Out Loud, is in the category for Book Product of the Year.
Amazing.
It's pretty exciting, with Biker being around for a decade now, so they've got some extra awards. So, congratulations to everyone who's been announced as a finalist. It's a pretty great achievement to be recognised and to have created something that that's powerful, that people want to know about in our area of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would love to talk to you all about your book, but tell me before we start, how would you describe yourself?
Wow.
Big question, isn't it?
That is a big question. And it's funny, you think people would ask this one frequently, but it's not one that I hear often. So I'm going to go with, and I can always provide a story behind this if you want, but I would definitely say that if I was to use a phrase, I would say left of center, just with all of my interests, like very esoteric interests, and lot of special interests over the years. So I like to go really deeply with the things that I enjoy and come back full circle to things that I once enjoyed that I, found something else to replace it with or something like that. So I would say, so I guess I would say creative as well. So yeah, I would say I'm unusual, creative, and open-minded.
Beautiful. I love those descriptive words. Now, congratulations on your new book. Very exciting. Becoming Gutsy and Formidable, One Life Out Loud. I love the title of your book. I'd love to ask you all about it. Let me start by asking you, how did you come up with that title?
That wasn't actually the first title that I came up with for the book, for what became the book. So I guess a little bit of a backstory. The idea for the book came about in around 2017, and I started to compile all of my writing that I had published online, writing that I hadn't actually got around to publishing, and just try to put it together into what I thought would be a great book. And it had a different title at the time, which is actually one of the chapters. Yeah, one of the chapters of the book has that name. So maybe as a little surprise, I'll share with you what that is later. And so the intent of the book pretty much stayed the same from 2017 up until the time when I applied for the Spirit Scholarship in 2020. And I came back to the book after studying holistic counselling because there was a lot of trauma and stuff that I processed, which I do talk about in the book. And so I just needed to get past that in some way, feel the sense of moving forward before I could write about other things. And so I had, by, I guess, 2020, the bones of a really good book, but it was just like getting back into it again. And when the Spirit Scholarship was announced, I knew I had this, document full of writing, but I wasn't really sure whether I would be ready, and I knew that I didn't have to do a manuscript. I just needed to provide like the first 5,000 words. But it was, I wasn't sure if I was going to do it or not. And about 2 weeks before the submissions closed, I was working with a copywriter, Miss Brixty at the time.
And she's so amazing. I was like,
yeah, she is wonderful. And I was like, oh, let's see what I can write and let's go from there. And so she helped me with the structure of it after I'd written it. But it was kind of good to go within that time period. And it was in that process where I went, well, what is my book about? Like, largely, what is it that I am trying to say? What is it that I'm trying to do? What is it that I've tried to become during this time? And then to also, I guess, pay homage to the business names that I've had over the years, Gutsy Girl and Formidable Voices. So that's how the title kind of came about. It's a journey of my becoming, with life lessons from childhood through to midlife, lots of revelations and discoveries along the way, and then just kind of coming to that point of going, well, it's a journey of becoming, and what's the aim? Well, what are two really big words to claim for yourself? Being gutsy, speaking up, doing what's right, using your voice, formidable, like standing strong, being strong, using your power, not worrying about being seen, even though you might be afraid of being seen.
Yeah, I love it. I think it was Julie Parker that described it as, a beautiful combination of memoir and self-help. And I love it. I love your questions at the end of each chapter. But I think for me, what I loved was that, in this online world, obviously all we see is the highlight reel of social media. And I loved being able to see you in a different way, and hear more about your experiences from your life, and kind of seeing that becoming, that evolution of you. It was beautiful. And so how did you find the process? Obviously, you won the scholarship, and then how was that process from that point onwards to actually getting it out in the world?
The first 6 months after being awarded the scholarship were good in that I had the energy, I was motivated, I wanted to make a really good start on it and try to get it done within a particular time period. Time is not one's best friend when you're a writer, because, I'm not someone who can plan or schedule into my calendar, this is going to be writing time. I don't work like that. I can't lock myself into a schedule. Like, I love journaling, so I thought, I'll put together like my book writing journal. It will just have like, my work, I'll track my word count, like how I'm going from, week to week, month to month, that kind of thing. That lasted not very long. And so I took myself away the following year in March to I rented a little cottage and just chilled out in Canungra. It was a rainy weekend, and I watched Vampire Diaries, and I made soup, and I just put together the first 30,000 words of my book. So at that time, and I pretty much knew at that time that I was halfway there, but I still had a bit of work to do on those 30,000 words. And then as I progressed through, what stories do I need to write next, that kind of thing, not really having a plan, not really sort of setting any process around it, I realized that it took a few months for me to realize that a blockage is writing about difficult stories, like writing about difficult times, like they're part of our lives, they're part of our story, but it's not very inviting to write about pain or to write about trauma. So, but what I came to realize was that blocking was an unlocking as well. So once I got there, so this is November of that year, so November 2021. So this is more than a year after I was awarded the scholarship. Still no final manuscript done. And then I wrote, a painful story. And then from there, I tried to quit the procrastination and sort of move forward with the writing, but it took a few months because it took a lot out of me to write a difficult story.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I don't, everyone is different, and everyone has different pain thresholds, and I have quite a high pain threshold, unfortunately. Very difficult when you're, a very sensitive, sensory-oriented person. Everything just feels big. But also I can calibrate knowing, what's reasonable, what's not for myself. But I think that when we go through difficult times, we don't really want to, we don't really want to talk about our pain, talk through it. Some people do. I'm a bit more solitary than that. I don't want to talk it through because I need time to process, just like anything, things take time for me to process, and I have to allow that. And so writing is a process, but it takes time. And so for me, it's a non-linear kind of thing. It just, writing is whenever creative fire hits me. It's whenever I'm ignited by an idea. It might be a word, a phrase in a TV show. It could be a lyric. It could be, the combination of musical instruments and the sounds they make together. Like, it could be anything that kind of makes me go, I have an idea. Or like even visual stuff. Like, I've got this really funny chameleon tea mug here. It's like got a chameleon for a handle. Just having different things around me just provides inspiration. So I have to be available for all of it, but then I have to choose and select what I want to put down. And so there was a lot of times when I was writing a book where I felt I was going with the flow. I mean, there was times of struggle, times of difficulty in between, but I felt like I was really going with the flow in the writing process. But there were other times where I felt really stuck, and so I couldn't touch it, you know. I can't just dip in. I'm either like, I'm all go, or I'm like, no, with writing. So eventually I got there, but it took a while. And I realized that, you know, if you're processing in a book, a lifetime worth of stuff, no matter how long your life is, you know, you could be in your 20s writing your first book. I'm like, you know, mid 40s, and that's when I finished writing my first book. So that's a lot of years to process and reflect upon, to come up with those reflection questions at the end of each chapter, which are questions that I asked myself along the way. And then it was just sort of breaking down which questions would be the most potent to put here. So there's a lot of layers to writing, and nobody really tells you how lonely it is, like how solitary it must be, because it's not, the writing is, to me, a small percentage compared to the thinking and processing that goes on in order to get the words out and down.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you have any support on that journey? I know you are quite solitary, but was there anybody that could provide you a bit of support along the way?
Oh, I mean, I talked about the writing, you know, how I was going with my husband about the book, and, you know, because he would ask like how it's going and that kind of thing, and friends would check in, and, you know, other friends were writing books too. So, you know, I had that support, but it's just, there's no advice anyone can give you when you're in the process of writing a book that's going to help you get back up when you are like in that lull of not being able to write because you are mentally stuck, or you are emotionally, your capacity's down, you know, or your energy's low. And you have to know yourself to know what these things are. Otherwise, it can be a really confusing journey, like anything can be. If you can't separate out what the hell is going on here, like, why am I feeling this way? You can't find the answer. So you've got to know yourself really well, and that's part of becoming. That's an important part to learn, that you have to know yourself uncomfortably so in order to become more of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you find the process healing at all, or therapeutic at all?
Yeah, absolutely. There were a few times where I just felt like the words were pouring out of me, and that felt like a really beautiful part of, you know, of writing the book. And it didn't feel like it was done until it was done, in terms of, yes, I can look back on that now, you know, months after it's been published, and go, yes, that feels complete to me. That did provide a lot of healing. During the process, it's like anything. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know, like, you know, what story is going to unravel and open up a new story, or something else that, you know, might pop up that you process or you write but then don't put in the book because still processing, that kind of thing. Yeah, so it's just, it's an interesting process to go through when you do have to do it on your own, because nobody can write it for you. Or you could get someone to write it for you, but would it really be truly your voice? No. So,
yeah. And how does it feel now that it's out in the world?
it feels like a really good release, because I think if I had done this alone, like without a publisher, without Natasha and the Kind Press, it would have, I could have taken even longer. I could have probably written about the next 5 years of my life. So accountability is great, though sometimes it's hard to even manage that when, you know, your book needs to come out, because my book took a good bit longer than what we anticipated, but the writing process is just one of those things. So at times I felt like one of those actors in a TV show who's like the writer, and their publisher or their agent is on their ass about their final manuscript, or, you know, their next, you know, book synopsis. And I'm like, yeah, that's what it feels like. But that person who's playing this role, that's all they are. They're not also, like, you know, taking care of a family and having a full-time job or a part-time job and having other responsibilities on top of all of that. And so that adds to the whole thing too. But on reflection, yeah, the whole journey of writing is healing, because you can go, I did that one huge project, that one really big dream, and I had all of my plates full.
Yeah, I think being a parent, I can't even imagine having to commit to writing a book while also navigating family life and work, and it sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I think it could have taken less time, but then I wouldn't have the richness of the stories, would I?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Before I read your book, I didn't realize you were such a creative spirit, and have loved watching your stories on Instagram since then of your miniatures, and I think that's so cool. I'm obsessed by that. Tell me about your creative journey over your years. I love you talk in your book about how your daughter used to tell people that you were an artist, and how that helped you own that title, which I loved.
Yes, yeah. Kids say funny things, but pay attention when they speak the wisdom.
Definitely.
Oh, sorry, can you ask the question again?
I guess I was just asking about your journey of creativity and
Okay.
kind of where that started and how that's evolved.
I've always enjoyed creativity, as you can tell from the intro of my book onward. I think that my type of creativity has sustained me, and the reason why it's been sustainable for me is because I know that I can always come back to it if something else takes my interest. And then the many layers of the different creative skills and art sort of oriented things that I've learned over the years have just layered into like lots of like really useful information that helps me create even more and helps me to use my imagination. I was a wildly imaginative kid. It's like I can live this real life that we're having right now, but I can have, parallel universes in my head of imagination and story. So there's a lot to draw from, because I've enjoyed creativity for a very long time. And there's never been a time in my life where I have felt that it wasn't doing anything for me. There were times where I stopped doing art for a while, because my battery was low across lots of areas of my life, particularly in my early 20s, those tumultuous times. But I always came back to some creative art of some kind. So I've done lots of classes over the years, from drawing, watercolors, acrylics, ceramic painting, silversmithing, goldsmithing. What else have I done? A few other things. A lot of self-taught stuff as well. Art from when I was doing art journaling and some of like the supplies and materials I can use in what I'm doing now with miniatures. And I guess because I've had a background in making small things with jewellery, I really enjoy making tiny things in miniature. So the first thing that I started making was a book nook that I just bought, that you assemble. And then I started making like little mini books out of wood and polymer clay. So I'm just going from there and seeing where that goes. But right now, I'm just using like my painting skills, like what I know about getting different like painting techniques and effects with what I'm making, and wanting to build lots of different things. So I've never really done carpentry or building, but that's part of making miniatures as well. So I like that I can use all of the creative things I've learned over the years, and all of like, the helpful tricks and things that you learn. I can put all of that into this. And I even said to a friend recently, I think I found like my lifelong like interest. There's just so many things I can learn how to do while still like always feeling like there's stuff that I already know how to do that I don't have to learn. So that feels like a really like that creatively feels like it's a really good place, but also from a mental and spiritual like well-being perspective, it's also great too, because it kind of soothes. It's part of, it's part of that sensory stimulation that I need, that I also find soothing. And I can lose time, like for hours. I can go, oh, what time is it? And it's 2 hours later, and I'm like, what, I've been sitting here painting? Like, my back knows now. That's one difference to, doing art and creativity in your 40s compared to your 20s. Your back or your neck tells you. It's like, yes, you have been sitting here for 2 hours. Move on. Have a stretch. But it's just, immersing in the joy of creativity, whatever it might be. It's not about, for me, it's never been about perfection. It's never about following the rules. It's about expression. What can I do if I do put these two things together? Yeah.
Beautiful. I think sometimes, like with creativity, there's a sense of, how do I monetize this, or what do I do with it? Which is okay. Obviously there's creative people out there, and it's good and great to make a living out of that. But I also think there's something beautiful in that creativity for creativity's sake, like the soothing nature of just being immersed in art. Have you ever found that, has that ever been a question for you?
Well, I have, so I have sold jewellery and some of my art initially. And that was just because when my daughter was in primary school, there was another mum there who was a designer, and she would sell things at markets, and she mentioned it to me, and I was like, oh, I might try that. At the time, we'd only been in Brisbane for a year, so I thought I'd be a good way of meeting other creative people, and it was. And I did that for a few years, but it is very difficult. It was just like more of a hobby than anything else that I really enjoyed doing for a few years. So some things, if they are a hobby and you turn it into a business, so long as it goes really well and you reach sort of the goals that you'd like to reach with it, yes, it can be very rewarding, but it's also a lot because it's personal, because it's something that you made. So it's hard to separate. For me personally, I find that hard to separate. And so it takes a lot more of you to run a business solo, which is too much if you don't know what your limits are, which I found the hard way.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it can take a bit of the magic out of it, can't it? When you have a whole business, finance, marketing kind of engine that needs to run it to make money out of it. So nice to just be able to enjoy it.
That's right.
In the book, you share that, and I'll just share a quote. Discovering that I am autistic has been the biggest revelation of my life, more than being bi, having ADHD, having PTSD, racial trauma, anxiety, depression, and panic attacks. I'm a late diagnosed autistic human at age 45. Why was, in particular, receiving that autism diagnosis so pivotal for you?
I guess it was just further evidence of the ways that we don't all receive the same treatment, or we're not seen in quite the same way, because diagnostic tools, for example, are measured upon one particular type of person, so people fall through the cracks. And I think in terms of the stage of my life too, I feel this would have been too much with other things going on earlier on in my life to know that as well. So it's good to know now, though it is obviously difficult that you're finding out like at this age and going, what the hell? And having written most of the book by the time, by the time I wrote that as well, it was like, wow, I didn't think that this would be part of the book. But what I realized was it had to be part of it because there's a lot of stories about people who are autistic and their discoveries, but it's all about sort of the terminology. And I feel from when I was going through the editing process of my book, I could see how it was always there. It was just in the storytelling. It wasn't in a list of traits or a list of things that someone could tick off on boxes. Yes, Sharyn's this, that, and the other. It was in the way that I told my story, and then at what depth I went with certain things, and then why. It's so knowing has helped with the why part of it.
Yeah.
And so it feels like for me, it's not for anybody else. It feels like proof to me that, things have been hard for other reasons, but hey, here's another reason to put on top of that one.
Yeah.
And then we really get to see when we have, various labels, we see how ableist society is, we see how patriarchal it is, we see how sexist it is, we see how unequal it is. And why do so many people just want to do nothing and not stir the pot?
Yeah.
And I feel like I did a lot of time stirring the pot, and I was burnt out in the end, for multiple reasons, but probably also because of, how much I care about the work that I'm doing and how much I've invested in that, in time, in labor, in learning. But it's sort of like an evolution of, everything that I've created. It moves from one thing to the other. It doesn't mean that once I've moved on, something matters less. It just means that sometimes you've got to matter more because you can't do deep, powerful work on an empty tank.
100%.
And I knew that already. But it was just, it took some time to like rein in the boundaries myself. It's not really about no to other people. It was really boundaries with myself, because when something that's part of your life becomes part of your work and then part of your community as well, it's just, it's almost like you're open all hours. And so it's hard to find the space and the inclination to, rein it in a bit. And it took a while for me to rein it in a bit. But now that I have, it's like, well, I never knew how good it could feel just being able to fill any available time I have with the things that I enjoy doing that are creative, and just how much better that is for my mental health as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've had a few friends who have had a late diagnosis of autism or ADHD, and there's this sense of kind of it's like, when you're in your 40s looking back on your life, it's like a puzzle piece that was missing, and kind of making sense of things that have happened through your life. And I guess it's, in some ways it's about just understanding ourselves better. But yeah, I don't know that I have a question out of that, but it's been interesting to observe, not having been through it personally, but to watch people go, like suddenly I make sense. And while there's, some sense of grief around that diagnosis, it's also ultimately kind of a healing experience kind of moving forward.
Yeah, it is. And I think when it comes to the healing part of it, when we think about like social interactions, from my perspective, it's an opportunity for us to reflect on our life where we were misheard, misinterpreted, not liked, last picked, and go, it wasn't me. It was the way someone was responding to me and how I am and how I was. And so that for me is a really big part of the healing part. Like sometimes when we care so much, or we can't let go of certain things and how we feel, we carry a bit of blame. And so I think that's been a really good release, aside from the fact that, there is the feeling of grief. When you look back at all of the times that could have been less painful. But ultimately, when they are interactions with others, and the burden we carry from those encounters, it's those people that were the problem, never us.
Yeah.
And we could all do with treating each other with a bit more kindness, I think. And unfortunately, over the last few years, I feel like there's less of that happening. People wanting to, I guess, jump and assume before, learning more.
Definitely.
And then even if you do want to learn more, sometimes people don't want to, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's that coming from a place of judgment rather than curiosity and allowing. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. I grew up with a mum who was always like, you just reminding me that you just never know what's going on for people, and it's a lesson that has served me well, I think, just going at it from a place of curiosity. God love Marie. So tell me, how do you find joy now when things feel tricky?
I think I would start by saying I always have a lot of stuff going on in my brain just ordinarily. I might be having a conversation with, my husband and my daughter, but then there's all these other things going on at the same time. So I just need sometimes just a little bit more time to kind of figure stuff out, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you have any sort of, I don't know, self-care kind of practices that you do regularly, or things that you just do to look after you? And I suppose also, looking through the lens of the fact that you are so much more aware now of your energy and how to protect that.
Yeah. I mean, there are obviously things that personal care type things that I do that I find helpful. Like I love baths, I love lying out in the hammock, but really at the moment, it's quite a process. Being a creatively inclined person isn't just the creative part. And as I said with the writing, it's not just the writing, it's the thinking, the processing, the reflecting, and the questioning and everything else. But with creativity, it becomes like a whole thing. It's like, I'm going to make stuff. So I'm going to read and watch stuff about this stuff that I'm making. And then I'm going to watch other people make stuff because I just enjoy watching people make things. And then I'm going to save a whole bunch of inspiration stuff on Pinterest into different sections of the different things that I'm interested in making. And then so it's like a fully immersive thing. So one project is going to, can take a few months because of all of the other stuff that goes on. And so I find that being able to immerse myself in creative things fills my time, but it fulfills me as well. And it puts me in much better mood as well. My whatever worries I might have feel less, even though I know that they're still there and they're still the same size. It's just finding that joy, in the creative process. And then I guess the other thing, music to me is self-care. It always has been. It's always been there. So listening to some music that I like, or singing in the car, and that kind of thing, or bursting out into song. Although this morning, I was going to write about this, but I guess I can tell you, Annie, and people get to listen to the story. This morning, when I was singing, I was whistling and singing Patience, Guns N' Roses. It was a very rousing rendition. I had a lot of energy when I woke up this morning. So there I was belting that out. I don't think my husband appreciated it terribly. So I went a second round about an hour later. but sometimes it's like those things are funny to others, but it gets everybody going. So sometimes Ryan will sing and, but for me, it's like an energy output. It's like I get to spend that currency for myself, but in a really positive way.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love that you have a playlist for your book. It reminded me, and I don't know if this ever happens to you. I feel like you and I have grown up in a very, in the same era, but we possibly have slightly different music tastes. But when I was, one day I was trying to remember a song like from my teenage years or 20s, and then I absolutely went down the rabbit hole of this 90s music, and I was like hours later and I'm singing away at dinner. So good. It really does. Like, music just has the power to change energy so beautifully. I think it's a really important part of our lives.
Yeah. And like all of my other interests, music, it's like I'm fully immersed. When I put those headphones on and I'm listening to something, it's like I'm hearing every single thing that's going on in that song.
Yeah.
So it always feels like really powerful, really joyful, really happy, even when the song I'm listening to is like really miserable sounding, or, like the lyrics aren't positive, but, it's like I say to my husband, it's like, you don't get like to experience low lows, you get real great high highs kind of thing, with like how much, love and bounty, whatever's your thing in life, the more you have of it, the more you can give of it. But then the more painful it is, because say you've got pets, we've got 3 Italian greyhounds. It's like, there's more to love, but there's a price for that huge amount of love.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because that's part of life.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. I think, there's that really nice part about tapping into music and it really making you feel something, like, there can be a nice just throw on a song and have a dance and what have you, but also, sometimes when there's those songs that like you turn them on and you're immediately starting to cry, like, I think there's a nice part about that.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't realize how much you're holding until you have a song on that cracks you open.
Yeah.
Because, that release that music can provide, particularly with the tears, I find, like on my playlist, there are a lot of pretty sad songs, but they represent pretty sad times and difficult times.
Yeah, definitely.
And even though some of those songs are like, by some of my favorite artists, and, 20, 30 years later, I can listen to those songs and I can recall the memory, but nothing has ever wrecked a song for me. Like, no one is ever wrecking a song that I love, kind of thing, I mean, there's enough out there in the world that's wrecking songs left, right, and center, just with various people. But largely, like all my favorites, nothing. No one can wreck those.
Beautiful. I have a Mama Love playlist on Spotify that I would love to dedicate a song to the playlist for you. What would you like to choose? I know that's a tricky question. It's like, which child do you love the most kind of question, but
when I saw that question, I was thinking about this, and I wasn't really sure what I would come up with, actually. I guess sometimes it would help with your playlist, like what kind of genres is that? Then I can pick a song that maybe doesn't like stand out, like,
Right. I feel like there's quite a big mix, but it is probably more spirit lifting style songs.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it is a big list. I don't know if you've seen me share it on Instagram. I do have a Spotify playlist of it, but it's 14 hours long currently, and it doesn't have every song on it yet, because it has some songs I thought of that I would have put in the book had I remembered them at the time. And there were songs that I added to later, but then there's songs that are still in the book that I still haven't put into this list. So this thing's probably going to be like 24 hours long by the time I've finished.
Look, I don't want to pressure you. You can tell me later if you like.
Yeah, I think I might have to, because looking at the list of songs, I'm just like, wow, there are so many good songs. It's going to be hard. Okay, no, you know what? I think I've picked one. And this reminds me of Biker and Formidable Voices, the Melbourne trip too. So it's Superstar by Seeker Lover Keeper. Yeah, it's just a nice, like, sweet, uplifting song. It makes me cry. It's one of those songs that makes me cry as well.
Beautiful. I shall add that one for you. Do you have a quote or a mantra that kind of keeps you going at times if you need a bit of extra motivation or inspiration?
I used to wear, I don't know where it is now, I used to wear this bangle that I made, and I'd stamped like sort of I guess a bit of an affirmative statement on it. And I used to wear that about 6 or 7 years ago, and I made it maybe close to 10 years ago now. And that is the first line of that, which I guess I want to highlight, is be true to yourself. But you might not know what's true unless you go a bit deeper and really get to know who you are for you.
Yeah, so important. I love that. Thank you. What are you working on at the moment? Has there been any writing since your book was published?
Look, I am doing a little bit here and there. No project in mind. I guess I'm just trying to enjoy sort of the aftermath of having published a book, and just what a huge project and a huge achievement that was as well. But it has been quite a time of, like, I've been requiring a lot more rest, in particular. And so I'm not sort of, I've got lots of ideas for things I'd like to do, but it just depends on whether I have the capacity to do those things, because one of the things that I am glad I've left behind in not sort of running courses and coaching since I moved to not-for-profit work is all the marketing and promotion and that kind of side of things. I really don't like that stuff. In general, it feels really unnatural, even when I am being true to myself, and I don't use any sort of capitalistic sort of marketing persuasive tactics or anything. And it just feels like a really hard slog, and I just don't have the bandwidth for that. So yeah, I mean, I would love to do some more things, like in-person things about writing, and to talk more about my book, but we'll just have to see what happens. But I would definitely like to do something, at least by early next year. So maybe that's one thing that I can put on my list, to maybe do something by then.
Beautiful. Watch this space, hey?
Yes.
How do we find and follow you?
You can find me online, SharynHolmes.com. I'm also on Instagram, Sharyn A. Holmes.
Beautiful. One of my favorite photos of you on Instagram is the on the big swing with that beautiful red dress in Bali. And I may have seen it before, but we went to Bali in December last year, and my son went on the swing. I wasn't brave enough. And so after that experience and then seeing your photo, I was like, oh, I know where that is. It's so gorgeous. So gorgeous. Yeah.
When were you there? Because we went in December as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We were there at the very beginning of December. So like 7th to the 12th or something like that.
Oh, okay. We were there, I think, from the 1st to the 8th.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
How funny.
It's so funny.
Yeah. That was awesome. I love that swing, but it was such a hot day. Like everything felt so steamy that day.
Oh gosh, it was so hot. I
my
mean,
gosh.
look, you and I are both in Brisbane and we know humidity, but that was next level.
Yeah. It was sticky.
Yeah.
But it was so beautiful there.
So beautiful. Thank you so much for chatting to me today. Thanks for all of the unique left of center magic that you put out into the world. It has been such a joy to talk to you today and to hear more about your creative journey and your writing journey. Thanks for being you. And I think also thanks for putting your formidable voice out into the world, because I think I know I can see how much energy that takes, and I think you're amazing.
Thank you so much, Annie. I've really enjoyed our chat today. Love your questions. They were wonderful.
Pleasure. Hey, thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Light Seekers Lounge podcast. I am so grateful to have you here. If you loved the show, it would mean the world to me if you could hit subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. I would love to continue the conversation with you, so come on over and join the Light Seekers Lounge Facebook group, or come say hi to me on Instagram at annielove.coach. Talk to you soon.